YouTube is filled with best build videos that are extremely powerful but also impossible for new players to get, simply because they require exotics, which new players don't have, and also maxed out rolls, which is also very hard for new players to acquire since they're playing on hard or challenging difficulty. With today's video, I hope to help new players put together an easy to get but also reliable build that will help them reach heroic difficulty on their map, farm for the exotics that they need, and all sorts of gear that they want to use for their builds, while at the same time they can keep that very same build upgraded all the way up to legendary difficulty. So in this video we will go over the best build for new players, how to improve it later on, and how to farm for it. Starting off with the actual build, that's a 4-piece striker: the mask, the gloves, the knee pads, the holster. 1 piece of Grupo Sombra for the 12% critical hit damage, and a chest cavalry piece for the 8% critical hit chance. For our backpack talent, we want Bloodsucker, and for our Chestpiece talent, we want Obliterate. Your weapon can be any assault rifle you like, or even any SMG you like. My favorite weapons to use are the Police M4, the Carbine 7, the FAMAS, and the PDR. Striker is obviously the best option here, simply because it offers us 15% weapon handling, which means reload speed, accuracy, stability, 15% rate of fire, which basically increases our overall DPS by 15%, and then the 4-piece talent. Weapon hits increase total weapon damage by 0.65%, stacking up to 100 times, 1 stack lost per second between 0 and 50, and 2 stacks lost per second between 51 and 100 stacks. So when you reach 100 stacks, which isn't that hard to reach, your total weapon damage will be increased by 65%. Our weapon talents will also offer a decent amount of increased damage. When it comes to the weapons, we will need the third attribute to be damage targets out of cover. If you decide to use an assault rifle, obviously the first roll is going to be weapon damage, the second one is going to be health damage, which pretty much means damage to turrets, black tusk dogs, and any enemy that doesn't have white bars above their health. When it comes to the talents of your assault rifle or your SMG, I would suggest your primary weapon to come with Streamline, which will offer you a 42% increased weapon damage as long as you don't have any skills on cooldown. When you eventually need to use one of your skills, obviously the Revive Hive if you go down, or if you want to throw your decoy in case you're in a very bad spot, you will have to change to your secondary weapon, which will have a different talent on it because Streamline will not be procced because we will have a skill cooldown. That second weapon should come with Killer on it, offering us 70% critical hit damage for 10 seconds after getting a kill with a critical hit. Other great options for your second weapon talent are Optimist and Strength. Now, because as I said, this build is for newer players who ideally will use it all the way from normal and hard difficulty to heroic, we need some survivability to make up for the mistakes that new players inevitably will make. For that reason, we're using 3 blue cores, which 3 blue cores should be on the striker simply because it's easier to recalibrate striker. All you want is the second attribute of your striker to be either critical hit chance or critical hit damage. We don't care about the percentage of it, we just want it to be there, and then you can recalibrate your core attribute from weapon damage to armor. The secondary attributes, the critical hit damage and critical hit chance attributes, we don't worry too much about them, even if they are 5 or 6 or 7 or 8%, simply because we can always optimize them. And optimizing, might take some time, but it's not based on RNG, so you can farm the materials needed and you can improve your build. On top of those 3 blue cores, which will put us at around 1 million armor, we will also be using the Bloodsucker backpack talent. Bloodsucker gives us 10% bonus armor for each kill we take. So if we have 1 million armor, each time we take a kill, we will be getting 10% bonus armor, which translates to around 100,000 bonus armor. That bonus armor lasts for 10 seconds or until, of course, the enemies break it. Unless, however, you take another kill in those 10 seconds. In that case, the bonus armor stacks on top of the previous 10% that you already had, so you will go to 20, and it refreshes its duration. So let's say you have already 4 kills, so you have 40% bonus armor right now on you, right? All that 10%, all that 40% of bonus armor, it gets destroyed by an enemy, and then you take a 5th kill in that 10-second window from when you took your 4th kill. Then you will instantly gain 50% bonus armor. When it comes to the chest piece, we're going with, as I already said, the Grupo Sombra piece and the Obliterate talent. Now keep in mind here that the backpack and the chest piece don't need to be as I'm showing them to you right now. You can switch them up, and what I mean by that is you can have the chest piece be Chestpiece and the backpack be Grupo Sombra. It doesn't matter. All that it matters is that in this build you have one Chestpiece piece and one Grupo Sombra piece. The backpack talent must be Bloodsucker and the chest piece talent must be Obliterate. Obliterate will give us another extra 25% weapon damage. When it comes to the rest of your attributes, you want to aim for an overall 45 to 50% critical hit chance, and then the rest of your rolls should go all towards critical hit damage. Don't get overwhelmed by the max rolls you see right now on my build, simply because this build doesn't need a lot of critical hit damage. The big boost on our damage comes from our talents, and that's what makes it so great, especially for new players. You see, the problem new players must deal with is getting low attribute rolls on their gear, which means lower damage and a harder time to kill enemies. With this build, however, as we already talked about, we get 65% total weapon damage increase from Striker, 25% from our chest piece talent, which is Obliterate, and another 45% weapon damage from our weapon talent. Or when that goes, on a cooldown because we just used a skill, we get an extra 70% critical hit damage. So all that critical hit damage you might lose from your low rolled attributes, you will get it as soon as you proc your weapon talent. What I completely forgot to talk about was, of course, the specialization. Gunner is the best option here, simply because it gives you every 30 load being 50% faster, 10% armor on kill, which suits Bloodsucker great and makes your survivability even better. And then of course we have rate of fire increased by 5% on kills for 5 seconds, which is also very, very nice because it stacks up with our Striker and it reaches a total of 20% rate of fire. So yeah. With all that being said, let's move on to the second part of the video, which is how you can improve this build. The obvious option is for you to farm the materials to optimize all of your rolls to max. As I said earlier, we don't need to worry for the percentage of the attributes on our build. Doesn't matter if it's 12% critical hit damage or 6% critical hit damage. Doesn't matter if it's 3% critical hit chance or 6% critical hit chance. We can always improve that just by optimizing them. Yes, it will take some time, but optimizing an item is a guaranteed way to get it exactly how you want it. Yes, it will take some time to farm for all the materials, but you can watch a guide on where to farm materials, how to get them, and optimize it as fast as possible. Keep in mind, as I said, that we want a 50% critical hit chance at max. Anything more than that isn't as important to you right now as extra critical hit damage. So make sure to invest your optimization materials to the right rolls. Another way to improve your build obviously is by adding different pieces to it. The more you play the game, the more drops you will get, and eventually you will get the best exotic piece at the moment in the game, which is of course the exotic backpack Memento. As soon as you get that, make sure to equip it, since it will improve not only your survivability but also your damage by a lot. So as soon as you get Memento, you want to put that in there. And since we're talking about exotics, the Saint Elmo's and the Chameleon Assault Rifles are two exotics that I would equip with this build. The Chameleon talent offers extra weapon damage, critical hit damage, and critical hit chance. Now, if you have the Chameleon, equip it. Chameleon is one of my favorite exotics, very simply for the reason that it can actually improve a build and take it from, a medium to average build all the way up to a top tier build, simply because it offers so much extra damage when you proc the talent. It's one of the exotics that seem to drop most frequently, at least for me, so you shouldn't have too hard of a time getting it. The best way to get it, from my personal experience, however, this is not backed up by any data or evidence, just what I've witnessed, is doing bounties. Bounties, for whatever reason, seem to drop the Chameleon exotic more frequently than other activities. Now, the last obvious way to improve the build is, of course, with increasing your expertise level on your weapons mostly, and then on the rest of your pieces. As soon as you get the Memento and the Chameleon, or even just the Memento, and max out all the attributes on the build by, the optimization station, it will be good enough for you to complete solo legendary missions. I've actually completed solo legendary missions with this build that you see right now on your screens, with the only difference being that I used the Memento backpack. Moving on to the last part of the video and how to get this build, this is also quite easy. Open up your map, go to countdown, select targeted loot to striker, change the difficulty to hard, and matchmake. After you complete 2 runs, at most 2 runs, you will have enough striker pieces to put together this build when it comes to the part of the striker gear set. When you're done with your striker, you will do the exact same thing with your weapons. It shouldn't take more than a couple of runs here as well. And then we go to the hardest part, which is of course the backpack and the chestpiece. Now, Grupo Sombra and Chesca Vairoba both drop with the red core attribute, so we are already good on the core attribute. We don't need to recalibrate that. The other 2 attributes, like 80% of the time I would say, drop with red rolls on them as well. And then the talent, of course, is RNG. So obviously the first core attribute, we already know that it's going to be what we like, and then we have 2 attributes and 1 talent, and we can recalibrate one of the 3. So if you get a Grupo Sombra Chestpiece, for example, with red core attribute, then critical hit chance, a random 3rd attribute which you don't like, right? Let's say skill damage, and the obliterate talent, you keep that, you recalibrate the skill damage attribute, and you're good to go. Countdown drops on average 40 with 50 items per run, and each run takes around 17 minutes to complete. So I would say if you started farming for this build right now, in 3 hours you could be done. If you get lucky, maybe even sooner. If you already have some of those pieces, even less time. But what's the most important part of this build is that as soon as you get Memento, you can start doing really harder content compared to what you are now. And also what's even more important is that this build, as we already talked about, gets most of its damage boost from its talents, not from your attributes. So you don't really have to worry about the rolls on your attributes. You don't need to worry about your critical hit damage. It doesn't matter if you have 100% critical hit damage or 150% critical hit damage, you will still be able to clear content and move from normal and hard difficulty all the way up to challenging and heroic. I hope you find this video helpful. If you're a new player, I'm working on a full guide for the entire game. I already have a guide for new players and a guide on how to put builds together. I will have those in the description, as well as 2, I think, videos with tips for beginners. So if you want to check them out, they will be down below in the description. Also, consider subscribing. I would really appreciate it. Feel free to ask any questions you have down below in the comments. Thank you for watching. Have a wonderful day. Bye bye.